All right, so we have a busy day, so I'm going to get through the items that we normally cover very quickly. First, I'd like to recognize and the guests that we have here and the people that are going to help with this, the League of Women Voters. So sitting up front here, we have Virginia Bass, District Supervisor, and candidates for District 4. We have Mary Ann Myers, I got to find, Lyons, sorry, Mary Ann Lyons, and Dani Burkhart. Burkhart? That was fun. Okay, and over here on the other side here, we have our moderator, Bird Lochte, and then we have Kelly Johansson and Patricia Winson, who are going to be the question sorters. And then we have Carol Masterson, who is organizing this whole event. And then we have also Becky Simpson right here. So we'd like to welcome them as well. And so with that, what I'd like to do is go ahead and introduce the moderator for our event. Her name is Bird Lochte, and she's going to take over now.
Good afternoon. I'm Bird Lochte of the League of Women Voters of Humboldt County. Today, the League presents the candidates for Humboldt County Supervisor, District 4. Candidates for this 4-year term are Virginia Bass, Dani Burkhart, and Mary Ann Lyons. Excuse me. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League is dedicated to providing impartial information to voters about candidates and the political process in order to help them make informed decisions. This is part of our citizen education program. The purpose of a candidate forum is to give citizens an opportunity to hear the candidates' views on a variety of issues. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan organization, does not endorse candidates or political parties. We hope that you will give the speakers your careful attention and will refrain from any demonstrations of support or opposition during the forum. We will thank all the candidates with our applause at the end of the forum. The format for our program today will be as follows. As moderator, I will introduce the candidates, after which each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Candidates have drawn numbers for the order of speaking. Audience members will be able to submit questions which will be sorted by League members Kathy Johansson and Patricia Ann Winterson to my left. Excuse me. They will be sorted to eliminate any duplications and questions of a personal nature. Usher Carol Masterson, raise your hand, Carol, will hand out cards, and some are on your tables. And she will collect your written questions if you'll hold them up in the air so she can collect them. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. The timekeeper is Becky Simpson, right here in front, and she will be showing the candidates how much time they have left. At the end of the question period, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. I would like to ask each one of you to turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate, and that we will all thank you that they do not go off in the middle of someone's answer. We will begin with Dani Burkhart with her opening statement.
Hi, I'm Dani Burkhart. It's wonderful to be in front of the League of Women Voters and Rotary again. I was here for Measure S forum about 2 years ago, so it's great to be back, and I'm looking forward to the questions we're going to have today. A little bit about my background. I came here as a transfer student from the CR campus in Fort Bragg, and I got my degree at HSU in environmental science and economics. I focused mainly on climate change policy and economics of developing countries. One of the things that I'm looking forward to most is getting to work on some of the potential opportunities that the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors is facing and being able to usher us into a new era. One of the big things I'm looking forward to building on is our resilient economy. It's time to break the boom-bust cycle of our extraction of resources and focus on things that will bring us into the future and build a resilient community as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Mary Ann Lyons with her opening statement.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think that I'm going to focus my introduction along the lines of what the Rotary Club stands for. Number one, I'm an educator. I've been involved with international projects. I've taken students to Thailand several times and done cross-cultural interactions with them and taught English as a second language there. I have also set up education projects between Egypt and Eureka High School in the past. I believe very strongly in education and in international opportunities for students. Besides that, I do have a master's degree in education. I'm well known in my community because I worked for our local food cooperative for 14 years. I was on their board of directors, and one of my claims to fame is that I pushed very hard to have our beautiful co-op that we have in Eureka built for us, and it wasn't an easy thing to cross those cultural lines to have that done. The rest of it we'll learn about in questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Virginia Bass with your opening statement, please.
Well, thank you again for having this forum. And for those of you who don't know me, I have lived in Eureka my entire life, graduated from local schools, graduated from Humboldt State cum laude with a degree in business administration. I worked 31 years in my family business while raising my family, and I didn't even think about politics until about the year 2000, and that's when I got involved in local government. I also currently serve as the Vice President of the California State Association of Counties, which is the organization that leads legislative efforts in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. for all 58 counties. When I jumped from the city to the county, I thought I knew everything. And little did I know it was going to take me 2 years to actually figure out how county government works. And I'm still learning because it is a huge animal. It's a huge corporation worth $377 million. I love what I do because I know I make people's lives better, and I believe I do an excellent job representing my constituents, but also the county as a whole, because we can't just concentrate on a few.
Thank you. Now it's time for some questions. We have a couple of questions up here, but we need more from the audience, so please write your question down and get it to Carol. Our first question, and we will begin with Virginia. How do you think the county can balance economic development while protecting Humboldt Bay for fisheries and recreation?
Well, I think we're always looking about how to balance those different interests, and I think that we can have more jobs coming in. I think in the ports specifically, we have some really great opportunities that should actually help us economically speaking, create jobs, but at the same time, we want to maintain the ability to have the recreational opportunities that people actually come to Humboldt County for. You know, tourism, especially ecotourism, is a really big thing these days. So we have to be sure to, keep that in the thoughts. But I think one of the things we did was we changed the regulations around coastal dependent industrial properties, which allow for interim uses on the peninsula. So that means the infrastructure will be protected, jobs can be created, and if appropriate business comes along that needs that type of property, those interim uses then will go to another location. So I think that's going to be a big benefit. And most recently, Recology opened up, and they have 125 jobs on the peninsula.
Thank you. Dani, you're next with that question. How do you think the county can balance economic development while protecting Humboldt Bay for fisheries and recreation?
As an environmental planning consultant, that's what I do in my day job, we are constantly tasked with that very thing. How do we balance the needs of development with the needs of our environment and the needs of the community as a whole? One of the things for the harbor that I've seen is that we are underutilizing its resources as a business-driving enterprise. While we do have the CDI interim uses, and that has been a great thing for moving some businesses in there, we definitely need to be focusing on the ways that we can make that port useful for larger enterprises and international shipping, if possible, along with other international uses such as a fiber cable and things that are already being worked on. We also need to use that port to build wind generation for the offshore wind that's going to be coming down the pipeline as a project. That port is going to be completely critical for the construction of those turbines and getting them out to sea. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ann, how do you think the county can balance economic development while protecting Humboldt Bay for fisheries and recreation?
I want to applaud both of my fellow speakers, but I think that the one thing that we're not taking into consideration is that we're losing our resources at an alarming rate. And how do we protect the resources that we have left by coming up with innovative ideas to move our culture forward and to recognize that we are a pristine and beautiful place to live? How do we represent that to the rest of the world? We are ranked #1 by Lonely Planet Guide as #1 place to visit in the United States. I think it involves marketing. I think it involves recognizing that we already have a beautiful, pristine area, one of the few left in the entire country. And I think that we should focus on salvaging and saving what we have left and looking for opportunities, including wind farms, which I think is a great opportunity, including interim use, which I think is a great opportunity. But I think that we need to really recognize that we're running out of resources. How do we best manage what we have left to keep our #1 status according to the rest of the United States?
Thank you. Our next question, we will begin with Dani. How will you attract business other than cannabis to this area?
Well, as most of you have seen in the papers, my nickname is the cannabis consultant, or even pothead. So clearly cannabis is something I am knowledgeable about. However, cannabis is not our everything. It is not the end-all, be-all for Humboldt County, and I'll be the first one and probably the one that's shouting that till we're blue in the face. So one of the things we can do to foster more diverse businesses coming to our economy is looking at the kinds of things that are unmet needs currently. According to the Workforce Development Guide, a survey report that just came out, 66% of our employers are seeking analytical skills and industry-specific skills from their applicants. And that's an undermet need for our community and for our businesses. We need to focus on training programs that emphasize those skills. We need to foster better relationships with our university and take advantage of the opportunities that come with that by building new relationships and new enterprises through those. And there's more at daniforsupervisor.com if you want to read the full plan.
Thank you. Mary Ann, how will you attract business other than cannabis to this area?
Redundancy, redundancy, redundancy. We do not have enough redundancy in our fiber optics. I believe that we live in a great area. I know plenty of people who have moved up here to do things that that involve internet capability. How many of you suffered the AT&T shortage? I think that I want to focus completely and clearly on bringing the opportunity for folks to work in industries, telemarketing and other industries that don't involve using our resources that we're so short on in our community. I think that that is of utmost importance, and I think that it keeps being pushed by the sidelines. I think it's very important for us to bring the capability forward. I also agree that we need training programs, but I don't think we need training programs in technology as much as we need training programs in the basic ability to do plumbing, to do painting, and to do other things. We have a severe shortage in those areas, as well as in teaching. So I would focus on those areas.
Thank you. Virginia, how will you attract business other than cannabis to this area?
Well, one of the things that's the biggest issue that we have, no matter who you're trying to attract, is housing. It's not just affordable housing we're lacking. We're lacking workforce housing. We're lacking housing for professionals. And I can tell you right now, that really turns a lot of people away. Another area where we have opportunity now is our air service. While air service may not seem like it's a generator of new jobs and businesses to our community, it is, because people who want to relocate here are finding it's very hard if they don't have an airport that can be reliable for service. So that's one of the areas I've really been working very hard on in the last several years, and we're making headway. The port is another great example. I heard wind farms come up. There's also other projects that are underway and really exciting, but they're not ready for the public yet to hear about. So look forward to some exciting things happen also in the port. And then the fiber optics definitely is an issue for everyone. And I get a lot of emails about that when those go out. So definitely need to see improvements there.
Thank you. Our next question, we will begin with Mary Ann. What can the county and city do to work together better?
That's an interesting question. It reminds me of when I was going to Humboldt State and working on an education master's degree while working in the English department, and I was surprised at how much the English department and the education department didn't even know who worked in each department. I think it's important for us to know who works in the area that we represent. I'm running to represent the 4th District. I believe very strongly that the 4th District, as the seat of our government, deserves to have a lot more time at the table because it is the center of our community. I think it's important that all city councils and governments work closer together. I believe that the city planning department, for example, which put on a very wonderful forum recently talking about how difficult it is to get housing in our area, was able to put on a forum that I was surprised not to see every county supervisor at. I think that we don't have enough opportunities to meet together and comment, and I would like to foster a more open door relationship so that we can.
Thank you. Virginia, what can the county and city do to work together better?
Boy, if I don't know that answer, I have enough experience being on the city side that I blamed the county for everything. And then now that I came to the county, it's like I realized, wait a minute, we're in this together, right? So I've worked very hard to nurture close working relationships with the city of Eureka. For 2 years straight, I had a group that met every Thursday morning in regards to homeless issues that involved the city and the county and some other community members and stakeholders. And we had success. We came up with the CHIP, and which actually ended up, Community Homeless Improvement Project, and also the MIST program. But the thing you have to do is continue those relationships. And as electeds change, it's a little bit harder. You have to work together. So we meet monthly right now instead of weekly. And by keeping those lines of communication open, you have better communication. You don't necessarily like what each other's doing, but as long as they know why you're doing it and you can work together to minimize negative impacts to the other body, it's a good thing.
Thank you. Next is Dani. Sorry.
No worries. I'd agree with both of my opponents on this issue that we definitely need to keep the lines of communication open. It's critical. You have to know who's who in the zoo, so to speak, to be able to move things along in county and city government. What's critical is fostering those relationships, making sure that you are on the same page, and if you are coming to disagreements, working your way through those. One of the things that we could add is having those forums available to the public where we have all of our supervisors and our representatives, district by district, so we're not violating some Brown Act rules there. But we could definitely have more where the community as a whole has better insight into what's going on both county and city levels. One of the things I've noticed in canvassing and phone banking is that not a lot of folks in the area are familiar with the different levels of government and who is sitting in those positions. And so one of the things we definitely need to do is do more public outreach so people know who's representing them.
Thank you. Excuse me. Our next question, there are actually two questions I'm going to put together. One is your position on the abandonment of the rail authority and conversion to rails to trails, and the other is how do you feel about an east-west railroad that would help drive the port and the local economy? And we will begin with Mary Ann.
Okay, give me 1 second. That's a great question. First of all, I believe the abandonment of the rail authority up in our area, that's happened, but I believe south of here, there's still a partial rail authority. I believe that abandonment of the rail authority and putting in a trail at this time is a much more economically feasible solution. We did not take over the rail, so the rail is still there in case we decided on future development and wanted to put in, let's say, a tourism rail from north to south between the two towns or something like that. The East-West Railroad, while I think that it's a beautiful idea, I think that the economics behind it, we have too many other crucial things happening in our community. I've just got to be honest. And I don't think that we have the funding to drive an East-West Railroad. I think it's a great idea. I would love to see it happen, but I'd also like to see more housing. I'd like to see some medical care coming into our area. I'd like to see our money spent on things that have higher priority at this time, quite honestly.
Thank you. Next is Dani, your answer. Do you want me to repeat?
I gotcha. Thank you.
Good.
I definitely think that there's advantages to going with rails to trails and implementing that. That's an economic driver. It increases our recreational opportunities within the county and extending outwards from our county. An east-west rail, when there's good information to suggest that that's not only economically feasible but environmentally feasible, it could be part of a broader plan to increase the capacity of what our port currently does and what it could do in the future, which would be a great economic driver for the community, is to have that extension out to Reading so we can move goods and services throughout the communities along the corridor there. But again, it relies on good information, problem solving and environmental impacts, and community problem solving, because we have to get everybody on board for that. I'm in favor of things that are going to drive our economy that can be done in a sensible, sustainable way.
Thank you. Virginia, would you like the question repeated?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, the Rails to Trail has always been an amazing concept when you think about it, but I think the current plan that we're hearing about with the abandonment and the Rails to Trail, actually it's a confusing thing to people, because they want to know what is really going to happen. Will the trains ever be able to run if the opportunity is there? So I think more public outreach and understanding of exactly how that's going to, turn out, I think is really important. And as far as the East-West Rail, it's a great concept. I've been interested in it for years. I know that there are challenges. One of the challenges is you need all 3 counties to buy in, and Trinity County right now is not necessarily thinking it's a good idea. If there was a private party that came forward that was willing to really put in a lot of effort, and of course there would have to be community financial input as well, but I think that makes sense. In the meantime, I think we just have to keep looking at the options and seeing what else is available, but it certainly would be a great economic driver if that were to happen. I don't suspect it is going to happen within the next few years, but never say never.
Thank you. Virginia, you're next on this question. Investing in early childhood consistently produces the greatest returns. How will you make sure Humboldt County supports our youngest children and preschools in particular?
This has kind of come up at a lot of conversations in the community, obviously, especially at the 2 town halls I had in regards to opiate issues. People are saying, take care of the children. The children are the adults of tomorrow. So how do we do that? One of the things we're doing is with the Measure S funding, many of those dollars are actually going to early childhood care and treatment, especially from 0 to 5 or 0 to 8. And so those are kids we really want to make sure turn into the amazing adults they can be. At the same time, we have to be sure that their parents are okay too. If you have a child who's being, getting all this great, information and being taken care of at school, and they go home to a family who is drugged up, homeless, have nowhere to go, and they don't have role models, all that early childhood education and help really doesn't work. So this has to be a holistic approach. It's not just about spending the money on the kids, but getting the parents to be healthy parents so the kids can grow up in a healthy way.
Thank you. The next is Dani with that question. Do you want it repeated?
Sure, why not?
Oops, be sure I have the right one for you. Investing in early childhood consistently produces the greatest returns. How will you make sure Humboldt County supports our youngest children and preschools in particular?
So we all know that when we create a stability in our community with not only the children but with the parents as well, it creates an overarching stability for all of us. One of the things that we can do, like Virginia said, is take a holistic approach. making sure that the parents are included in these programs, making sure that they have access to the resources they need to, have the life skills they need to conduct, themselves in our society, to also be able to care for their children, bring in the resources that are required to care for their children. One of the other ways we can tackle this is to focus also on teens, because there are currently no programs that serve teens who have substance abuse issues in our county. They're very hard to come by. We also have issues with dual diagnoses folks not having access to addiction services, and these are all things that destabilize our community that we need to work on.
Thank you. Excuse me. Mary Ann?
As I mentioned previously, I am a teacher. I teach kindergarten through 8th grade independent study. I teach our most at-risk youth. I teach of our youth that have great advantages too. I spend my days focusing on what we can do better for our early childhood education. I think we need to focus on more funding. I think we need to focus on finding more grants for our area, because we do live in a rural area, and the funds are out there. And we need to focus our time on getting the funds to us. And I think on that note, I do agree that we do have a high incidence of youth that are in trauma. We have a high incidence of parents that are in trauma. I deal with it daily. I can say that focusing on bringing better educators or more educators to our area, we do have a shortage. You wouldn't think that we would have a shortage with Humboldt State having an education program, but we do. I think that we should spend a lot more focus and a lot more time at the county level on what's happening with our early education youth, for sure.
Thank you. Our next question, I'm combining two of them. This has to do with the Mercer Fraser property in Glendale and Willow Creek. And the question is, as supervisor, would you rezone that for Mercer Fraser? And while you were on the Board of Supervisors, why did the Board of Supervisors consider the appeal not timely? And we will begin with Mary Ann.
No, I absolutely will not support Mercer Fraser doing anything next to our very precious water supply. It's one of the rare things that we are lucky enough to have in Humboldt County, and that is a vibrant water supply. I think that the areas around our rivers were zoned for that reason, to protect our water supply, and I think anything near our water supply, it just doesn't make sense to me. There's many other areas that, and many other properties where Mercer Fraser could decide to build a marijuana extraction plant. I think that I'm absolutely morally opposed to it, as well as knowing that my grandchildren are growing up here and I want them to have good drinking water. I don't know, I think that any appeal by any government agency who has a stake in keeping our water clean and pure would be timely, even if it was an appeal given on the very last day at the very last moment. I'm absolutely opposed to it.
Thank you. Virginia, would you answer those two questions, please?
You bet. The Mercer Fraser project, as it was brought forward, was really lacking from what I understand. When we rezoned the area and during our mapping with the general plan, it made sense to change it all to heavy industrial because that was the historical use of that property. But of course, there weren't any plans brought to us of any types of businesses that were different than what they were doing. So it certainly was an awakening that sometimes you think you do what makes sense and it doesn't. Quite frankly, in regards to the appeal, it never came to the Board of Supervisors. There seems to be a real misunderstanding in the community. It was appealed, but then the parties started working together because quite frankly, that's usually the best way to get a solution. And my understanding is they tried, and right now the permit has been pulled. I have no idea if it's coming back, but if it does, it would have to be substantially different, and I just don't think it's going to work because the majority of the community really was upset. And I respect the water district, and I would really want them to be on board.
Thank you. And Dani, your answer, please.
I publicly opposed this project from the beginning. I was one of the main speakers at the Water District's hearing, emergency meeting rather, about this project. Apparently they had failed to be consulted about what was getting placed near our water sources. Not only was it lacking that way, I question how it made it through our planning commission in the first place, knowing that it is such a controversial project and it affects the drinking water of 88,000 of our residents. That's unconscionable. Who is making that decision? And unfortunately, I have to point out that the board, our planning commission is appointed by the board of supervisors. So, that needs to be addressed. We can't be having people green light projects near our drinking water just because we thought it was a good idea to rezone everything near our drinking water heavy industrial to accommodate the gravel mining that exists there. One of those things that I think gets missed about this is rezoning all of that area to heavy industrial opens it up to future wants for development. It's not just this project, it's other projects that could go there in the future that fit the heavy industrial category, and that's unacceptable.
Thank you very much. Our next question, we begin with you, Virginia. There will be a measure on the November ballot to make Humboldt County a sanctuary county. Are you in favor, yes or no?
No. And the reason for that is twofold. Quite frankly, if it says sanctuary, it makes people have a sense of security that really isn't fair, because people who think that things are going to change will still find enforcement action. In fact, if you call yourself a sanctuary county, you will find more enforcement action. It won't change anything that the sheriff currently does. The sheriff will still be doing, he does everything now that would fall under that ordinance. So I think it's just the wrong way to go about it, and I think it's actually dangerous when you do governance from the ballot box, because anything that goes through that process can't be changed when it gets to local government, and we're the ones that would have to carry it out. So that one in particular, it could be very problematic, especially the way it's being brought forward and the way it's being written. But I completely appreciate the immigrants in our community who work hard and who obey the laws. And quite frankly, I wish we could send the people who actually started out in Humboldt County who are real problems, I wish we could send them somewhere else.
Thank you. And next we have Dani with that.
I'm sorry, I have to make a comment. We don't solve our problems by sending them away. We just make them somebody else's problem. So I'm sorry, but I can't get behind that one. There's that too. I definitely believe that the people who live here, the families that contribute to this community, deserve to have a sense of security when it comes to the ability to call on public services like police and fire and those kinds of things where, trust is crucial, security is crucial, and that builds on our community stability. If we allow those that are most vulnerable in our community to feel safe, we're all safer. And I can't stress that enough. And I'm going to leave it right there.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
I'm proud to say that I strongly support having Humboldt County be considered a sanctuary county. The state of California is a sanctuary state. We should not have to worry as teachers, as police officers, or anyone else in our county what's happening with the children that are under our purview. I've helped collect signatures for Central del Pueblo. I'm proud that it's on our ballot, and I strongly support coming out proud and loud as Humboldt County offering sanctuary to folks who have lived here for a long time and been our neighbors and worked with us together. I could go on and on. I can say that I do believe in governance through the ballot box. I think that we have seen very clearly that by having a majority of people come together and make a decision, sometimes that speaks louder than having a few people who are sitting up on a dais making a decision for us. So I very much believe that we should be a sanctuary county.
Thank you. Our next question, we will begin with Dani. Do you support the current policies of the board to allow 1/2 acre and larger cannabis grows on timberlands, and why?
I originally got involved in the cannabis policy end of things back in 2015 and 2014 when we started bringing up legislators, Gavin Newsom, McGuire, Woods, all of our local representatives, and we brought them up here to show them what goes on the ground. In that effort, I showed them what a small scale, 5,000 square feet and under, what a medium scale, under 1/2 acre, and what a 1 acre and larger operation looks like. half-acre operations and larger can be done right in the right areas. There's a lot of environmental vetting that has to go on with that, and a lot of agencies that must be consulted to get that far. One of the things that I think having those operations out in our hills does is actually increase our road sediments, because our roads are really in disrepair. And that's really the biggest concern I have for having operations out in timberlands, aside from the other environmental issues we've seen come through, but that is a huge one, and we definitely don't need to encourage more of that.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
I am opposed to having grows on timber harvest land that is over a half-acre size. Our timber roads that have sat there fallow for so many years and finally were growing in have been reused. Folks have been sitting on top of the hill, taking the water from the top of the hill so that there's nothing left for our salmon at the bottom of the hill. I also am opposed to small farmers being left out of the deal completely. Small mom and pops who have been living up in the woods for 40 years, the back-to-landers who came here to do something a little bit different 40 years ago, have been left out of the deal completely. Big farmers are coming in, they're taking control, they're growing more and more and more, and the small folks are getting left out while the outsiders are getting let in. So I am opposed to TPZ land being used for any marijuana growth.
Thank you. Virginia?
Actually, TPZ lands are not allowed for marijuana grow. Timberlands and TPZ are two different things. So that to me is a real important distinction, because I don't think they belong, definitely not on TPZ. As far as timberlands, I don't think they're the most appropriate. I know that we've been making efforts to bring people out of those areas and relocate them to places that make sense, like agricultural lands. We actually have a program where if people relocate and remediate the problems or the property where they were, they actually get an incentive bonus. So we're really trying to keep people from growing out in timberlands, because that does create a lot of additional problems. And while I'm at that, I do want to just mention, since I have a few seconds, on the immigration issue, I wanted to say that I am active on the national level working on immigration reform, and I'm on the national task force for that, because that's really how we're going to fix that issue.
Thank you. Our next question, we will begin with Mary Ann. What is your viewpoint of having a safe injection site, and why?
That's a moral quandary for me. I oppose a safe injection site. I think that we need more ability to bring mental health practitioners into our area to help work on practices that bring people back into a whole ability to, you can see it, I struggle with this one. I know folks who are addicts. I've had family members who are addicts, and I can say that continuing to allow them to have a place to stay addicts doesn't help them move away from addiction. I think very clearly that we need to bring in more medical and more mental health capabilities to work on fostering positive ways to move folks out of that, that environment. So I'm opposed to it.
Thank you. Virginia?
Yeah, this has come up and been quite the conversation. It's happening in other countries, but the idea of having it in our area without being asked, we were put in legislation without even being asked, let's say that first, and so we had to react. It's not a good fit for our community. From the public health perspective, you know, the reason it's being pushed by health department is because their job is to not let anyone die. One death is one death too many. So you've got the public health department that has a very different view than the community at large. As far as enabling, the concept is when people go in there that they would be hooked up with services, because one point in time they'll be ready and someone will be there. But I don't know if it works. I haven't seen any evidence. I don't think we're ready for it. I personally am an advocate for expanded treatment services, because I think that's actually where we can make the biggest difference. And San Diego, however, is moving forward. So we'll have a California example somewhere years down the road, but it's not right for us.
Thank you. Dani?
At first, I was in favor of the safe injection site because I felt like like Virginia said, that, you know, it's an opportunity to access somebody who might be ready for help and get them through there. The problem we face in the community right now is that we don't have the services to back that up. Medically assisted treatment is one way to go about this crisis, but the other ways are, you know, the more diverse ways of attacking this problem are going to be to our benefit, but they're only going to work if we have all of the systems in place to back up those solutions. We don't have the programs available and the beds available to handle the amount of people that could seek treatment through a safe injection site. We don't have the mental health professionals in the area to staff that kind of a site. So really we need to focus on retaining what medical services we have and expanding the medical access services that we have.
Thank you. Our next question, we will begin with Virginia. What would you like to see funded with Measure Z taxes?
Well, Measure Z through the years have funded a lot of public safety issues. We've got 70 different projects. We've already hired 40 sheriffs. We're dealing with problem roads. The district attorney is getting more dollars, and I think those are all good things. But quite frankly, I don't think we're spending enough in other areas. I find addiction issues being one of the areas that really need money, and I think that is a public safety issue. I also think homelessness is a public safety issue from many perspectives. So it's really hard to try to put all that money into so many different areas and make an actually true impact. I know there's been conversations for the city of Eureka needing more of the dollars, and just so people know, Measure Z funding is done on the basis of applications that are turned in. So we're encouraging the city to certainly turn in more applications for more dollars, and I think they'll actually see that they're going to get what they need. We work very closely with them, and through Measure Z, we've also been able to work with the MIST team, which is the Mobile Intervention Services team, which is pairing law enforcement and mental health, which is a really important thing.
Thank you. Next, Dani.
I'd like to agree with much of what Virginia has to say there. There's a lot of great things that do come out of Measure Z, funding roads, more sheriffs, etc. I do agree that, you know, Eureka could see a greater share of that funding because it is facing the majority of the problems as the county seat. Whether or not it's up to them to get creative with applications for that funding is not for me to decide at this point because it's what our system is right now. I think that a better use of our money also with Measure Z funds in mind is tackling more of the homeless issues and the addiction issues because those lead to a lot of our public safety issues. Having been homeless twice in this county myself, once as a student and once just after graduation as a student, it's a rough world out there, folks, and if you haven't experienced it for yourself, I invite you to go to a tour with Betty Chin and get some insight on that because being homeless here is no picnic. I can assure you that any person who's attempted to go through school and get jobs and do the thing does not desire to be homeless in this county, and we need to come up with more creative ways to help them achieve that goal.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
First, I'd like to say that I'm really proud of the Eureka Police Department for doing as much as they have with as little as they have. I live in Eureka. I live right on Fairfield Street. I can tell you that I get to see and watch it. Measure Z is driven by applications, but it's quite difficult. I tried to reach out to figure out how to get the information myself. I think that there's a little bit of a block between getting the funds and the applications. I don't think that it's clear enough, or I think that the city of Eureka would have reached out a long time ago. Measure Z funds are based on our tax dollars. The major amount of money is spent in the city of Eureka, at the mall, at all the places in Old Town, at the other services that are available at our county seat. And the money isn't being spent at the county seat to make our county seat healthier, more vibrant, or look better. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Our roads go down, most of our city streets are falling apart. I think that we need to do something to make the applications more equitable. I don't think that the majority of money should go to the Sheriff's Department, which it does at this time.
Thank you very much. Our next question, we will begin with Dani. What opportunities does the county have to address various healthcare personnel shortages which currently exist in our area?
Well, one of the problems I see is when we lost the nursing program at HSU. We lost a lot of the funnel of folks that would come through that program, which was nationally recognized back in the 80s, and how we lost that, to me, is a travesty. So we've definitely lost one of the generators of folks in that occupation. The other thing is we have a hard time retaining folks once they get here. Part of that is from our other issues of urban blight, we can say, for shorthand. We can, but it comes down to, what do people want when they come here? They not only want a stable community around them, they want to know that there's stability in their job, that they're going to be respected as a member of the community when they contribute to the community. And people who come through here don't necessarily feel that that's what's going on. So one of the things we can do to retain more folks is to focus on continuing our trails programs and adding recreational opportunities and other wonderful opportunities for taking advantage of our local resources and that kind of thing. But we also need to work on their education.
Thank you. Next is Mary Ann.
Could you repeat the question for me?
Yes. What opportunities does the county have to address various healthcare personnel shortages which currently exist in our area?
Well, besides the fact that we live in paradise, and I think that we don't sell paradise well enough, I also believe that we can come up with incentive programs. The county supervisors have fiduciary responsibility over what, 39% of our county budget? Around 30% of our budget. I think that there are creative ways that we can entice folks to come here. I believe that there's properties that are available that we could have our doctors and nurses live in for reduced amounts, for example, that could be, what's the word I want to say? It could be funded. When you say urban blight, I don't believe it's urban blight. I do believe that, again, we do have a monopoly. We do have one business in particular in our area that runs most of it. I think that we need to work together with the community around us and with our hospitals to come up with some better solutions. I do feel very clearly that, again, fiber optics can help with that. And I'll just stop there.
Thank you. Virginia?
Well, we can start with the nursing program being gone. That was my number one thing. Again, I mentioned housing. We don't have workforce housing or even housing for professionals, and that's been a real problem. Third, we have to take care of the spouses. You'd be amazed how many people come here with jobs and they bring their spouses, and the spouses aren't prepared that there's not a Macy's nearby, or they're not used to not having more entertainment. And a lot of people leave, and that's unfortunate because they don't really get to know our community. So hooking the spouses up with jobs and also a buddy system, I think, would be really helpful. A reliable air service is one of the things we certainly have been lacking, and we believe that will help, because when people move here, they want to be able to travel home and visit their family and friends and where they came from. And then Open Door did a wonderful job at being creative. One of the things they did was, with the people that they brought on board, they actually moved the grandparents to Humboldt County. And by moving that support system here, it kept those people here. So there's a lot of things we can do. We just have to work at it.
Thank you. Our next question, next is Dani. How are the county, CDFW, the Water Board, and state licenses for cannabis going to get on the same page?
Well, it's going to take a lot more meetings than currently happen. I know I've been to a lot of those meetings. There are endless meetings. That seems like usually the answer isn't to have more meetings. Unfortunately, in this case, it is about having more meetings. And also, it's about getting personalities in the room to hear what the concerns are of all the other folks and getting those addressed. One of the things that I experienced in the 2015 iteration of the ordinance before the one that we are with now is that it's really hard to get people focused on the common goal and staying within that. And if we can get people on board with the common goal that we need to get people permitted, we need to also be able to pay for restoration efforts and cleanup of, trespass grows and illegal grows that have been out there destroying our hillsides. We need to take the opportunity to build those relationships more. From what I've seen, there's not a whole lot of communication already happening between the different entities. A lot of times it falls to consultants like me to do that communication for people, especially when it comes to getting people through the permitting process.
Thank you. Next, we have Mary Ann.
I think it really boils down to lack of staff. I think that Humboldt County, as being the international seat of marijuana throughout the world, was hit with a lot of applications. And I think if you think about what our water board was doing 5 years ago compared to what it's doing now, it wasn't going out and making sure that your well was permitted or you were so many feet away from the water, and et cetera, et cetera. I think that really they all are on the same page. I think that they are overworked and underfunded. And I think that there's not enough employees available like there aren't for many state or county positions. So what's happened is you've got the same water board or the same folks at the planning department trying to wrap their head around how many and changes coming down the pipeline constantly at the county and state level. So I think they all are already on board. I think that they just could use a little more help to get the job done.
Thank you. Virginia?
This is like building a plane while you're going down the runway. And every time we turn around, there's something new, and we're finding out there's a lot of bugs that we have to work out. And definitely, better communication between the different organizations is a must. And I think it can happen, but because people aren't being heard, or they don't feel like they're not being heard. I spent a lot of time over the Department of Fish and Wildlife talking with one of the gentlemen there, Scott Bauer, who's just so frustrated because we would send information to him, they would check it, and they go, well, no, they actually had a lot more existing they had a lot less existing that they're trying to say they have existing. And so then they have to go back, and I think they're frustrated. So I think we need to find a way. Getting together is great. I think getting different agencies sometimes is a challenge, especially the water board, because they're not here locally. But I think it's important, and I think we have to listen to what they have to say. And I think right now they feel like we're not listening to them, and that's just not the right way to do business. So I think it's going to take a lot more concerted effort to bring those folks in the room, just like any other relationship needs to be nurtured.
Thank you. Virginia, you'll be first with this question. What resources are we short of?
Money. Boy, is that supposed to be natural resources or just what we need to do our work?
Resources.
All right.
What resources?
Money and people. People who are trained to do the work that we need them to do. We can always use more, better roads. So I hate to say it. It boils down to money. That is the main resource. So we have to work on our economic development and many other things. That was a tough one with one easy answer: money.
Thank you. Yes. Next is Dani.
Well, love him or hate him, Brother Bill told us all, it's the economy, stupid. Economic development is definitely something we need to focus on. It is not the most resilient it could be. Where does our money come from? A resilient economy. So that's what we lack right now as a resource, is a resilient economy. It's very much an opportunity that can be taken advantage of. There is a lot there, a lot of potential to be grasped. We just need people to get on with the vision and go reaching for the brass ring, so to speak. One of the other things that I'd like to mention is that there's more here than just economic development. One of the resources we're lacking is community support. And not support of issues, but community support of each other. We need to build the community up to be supportive of each other, because then we can accomplish so many more things that drive our economic development and bring more money to the economy.
Thank you. Well, this is a first for me. I have moderated I don't know how many
I didn't
forums.
answer that
Excuse me.
one.
Oh, Mary Ann, did I miss you? I'm so sorry.
It's
That's
okay.
not a first. I do that every time.
Yay, I get the lucky miss. No. I agree with what both of the ladies sitting to the left and right of me have to say, but I do think that we're missing out on technology. I think that we're a little bit behind the times on technology in our area, and that's across the board. That's whether it's fiber optics or better technology, so better redundancies, better technology opportunities in our schools. Our students don't have enough computers to work on very often. We aren't teaching our students to be good 21st century folks in our community. We do want to retain those students. We do want our kids, I want my grandchildren to grow up here. They're 10 and 5. I'd like to see them here when they're 35 and 25. So I agree with what they both say, but I do feel that a lot of it is a lack of technology.
Thank you. Did I get everybody on that one?
Can I go again?
No. No, but you have one.
You have one last question, and this is the first time it's ever happened. The last question you submitted is the last question because of time. So this question, and we will begin with, if I can see, with Virginia. Tell us what you would do to deal with homelessness.
In 1 minute.
Yes.
Okay. I think we're doing several things right now for homelessness. I want to concentrate on the housing part, though, because what's missing is units for people to live in. So I've worked really hard in the last few years on several things to make building easier. I facilitated the building of the lodge. I worked really hard with the Housing Authority to change how the voucher system works. It used to be person-based, and now it's project-based. And they can use that project-based vouchers actually as a dollar match when they go for their grants. And it actually made it happen that the Veterans Facility is now going to go forward. Another thing we're doing is we have a housing trust fund, and we are enabling people to rehab units that are not able to be rented because they just need a little tweaking, and that will help get people get in housing. And we also have a landlord program. It's very robust. In fact, we've got someone in the back who could probably tell you more about that, because we need to encourage landlords to take a chance on some folks who could be really good tenants, but we have to incentivize the landlords by providing mitigation and protections for them.
Thank you. Mary Ann.
Boy, if this isn't the number one question. The first thing I'd like to say is our homeless problem and our criminal element in Old Town are two completely different things. They might have a small overlap, but when I have people ask me about homelessness, they're very often asking me about the criminal element in Old Town. The criminal element in Old Town is pervasive. Not one of us have gone outside and not seen some egregious activities happening when we're trying to go out to dinner with our family. The homeless problem, I agree, has a lot to do with lack of housing, but it's not just lack of housing, it's lack of opportunity. And if you can't give a homeless person an opportunity, my son's sister-in-law slept on their couch for over a year waiting for affordable housing. And that's after she had slept on her mother's couch for almost a year waiting for affordable housing. That is 2 years with a 7-year-old, now 7-year-old. So it's a much bigger problem. I think that we need to start working together as a community, kind of what Dani said. I think that the not in my backyard mentality has got to go out the window at this point, because while we think we have a homeless problem, LA has the entire population of our town sleeping in its streets every night.
Thank you. Dani?
Like I said, having been homeless twice, this issue is near and dear to my heart in this community. One of the things that was enabling me to lift myself out of that was the opportunities afforded me by community members. Some of them are in this room. That's a big thing. We need to give people opportunities, like Mary Ann said. A lack of units is also a huge deal, because there's a lack of units for everybody, not just people who are sleeping on the street and would like not to. One of the things that I see that we can do is provide an appropriate sanctioned place where people can camp without having to be in the doorsteps of local businesses and local residents and sleeping in people's backyards. Let's have a sanctioned place where there's social services available several times a week that offers a way for people to get a shower and go to job interviews. Like, we have some of those services already, thanks to Betty Chin and some of the other local nonprofits. But those are efforts that really need to be expanded upon and well funded. Again, it just keeps coming back to how are we helping the most vulnerable people in our community be stronger, because we're all stronger when they're strong.
Thank you. Now it's time for the closing statements, and we will begin with Dani. No, excuse me, I'm sorry. That was opening. Yes, we'll begin with Mary Ann.
Whew. Okay, well, it's kind of hard to just speak for a minute after all of that. I'd like to first of all thank you guys for the opportunity to get to know me a little bit. Some of you may already know me, some of you don't. I encourage you to go to maryannlyons.com, MaryannLyons.com, to find out more about me, or go to my Facebook page, Mary Ann for Supervisors, so I don't have to spend too much time explaining who I am. I have talked about being a teacher, but I'm a lot more than a teacher. I'm a local mom and a grandma. I have a lot that I'd like to share with you, but I feel like in 1 minute I would just be blathering on. I kind of want to just cut it short at that and just say, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to each and every one of you personally afterwards if you'd like to. We'll take a couple minutes to talk one-on-one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Virginia.
Well, I'd like to thank the League and the Rotary Club of Eureka for having us here today. You know, we live in a small community. We all know each other, and trying to choose between people you know is always really hard because we're all good people. I know both my opponents, and I respect their talents and what they do, and I think their abilities in what they do are great. But I'd like you to consider voting for me because I'm the one who's got the proven track record to keep moving the community forward. I've gotten things done. I've tried to give you a few instances of that, and I'll share more with you if you'd like later. I'm the one who has the most varied experience to bring to the table, and I'm the one who showed the longest commitment to my community than I believe others have. And quite frankly, I think experience counts at this very tenuous time in our community. I ask for your support and your vote if you live in the 4th District when you go to the polls on June 5th. But we're in this together, so the fact that we're out here at this table talking is such a good thing.
Thank you. Dani, your closing statement.
Well, I can definitely say the respect is mutual. There's a lot that incumbent Supervisor Bass has done for our community and has shown a great commitment to this community. I don't think either one of us are here to try and downplay that commitment or even disparage it. It's something that should be treasured by the entire community. I look forward to seeing that as an inspiration for more young people to step up and want to do the job as well in the future. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that sometimes experience doesn't just come with age, it comes with your activities. As somebody who's been a leader in the cannabis industry, who has organized tours for our top elected officials to see the realities of what we deal with in this county, as somebody who has been consulted on policy across the nation when it comes to legalizing cannabis and the effects on rural policy that it has and their economics. As somebody who just genuinely fell in love with a place that accepted me as who I was, faults and all, and I want to give back to that community. I want to see the best future that this community can see.
Thank you very much. I would like to encourage the candidates to put your information on Voters Edge, which is the League of Women Voters of California website for all candidates. And those of you in the audience, pick up one of the bookmarks either on your table or in the table in the corner where we have more of them. And then you can tell them more about yourself and you will be able to see about them. I'd also like to encourage you to take our Humboldt County Guide to Government, put out by the League for the community. There are several on the tables. If you don't get one and they're all gone before you leave, let us know and we'll get one to you. I would like to thank the Eureka Rotary Club for co-sponsoring this forum. Thank you to League members Kathy Johansson, Patricia Ann Winterson, Becky Simpson, and Carol Masterson for their help today. Thank you to Access Humboldt for taping this forum so that others in the community will be able to see it at another time. Thank you to all of you for being an attentive audience and for your thoughtful questions. And a very big thank you to all our candidates for their willingness to run for an important office and for taking the time to answer your questions. Please be sure you are registered to vote and vote on June the 5th. Make democracy work. Thank you.